Thanks for watching live or listening back to this show from Teachers Talk Radio. You can catch up with all our shows by visiting our YouTube channel or by listening back at ttradio.org. Don't forget to like and subscribe to enjoy more live education conversation from TTR. We hope you enjoy this show.
Outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.
Okay, so it sounds like we don't have like actual sound.
Yeah.
Good morning and welcome back to Points of View. This week, I think it's a particularly big week for teachers, having just had, 2 back-to-back results days. And what better story to start with than talking about disadvantaged pupils and also pupil outcomes. So I believe our first story today is about white British pupils, white working class pupils, and highlighting, well, there was an article highlighting the particular disadvantage that they face in outcomes at school and in exams. So is there anyone that wants to go first to kind of talk about that?
Well, I want to, because I in the first place. I just think that people don't regard it as a real issue because they're the majority, and therefore, or a majority of people within this society, and therefore they don't take into account what's going on. And where we fail towards the white working class is where we fail towards all children, as far as I'm concerned. That's where we get it wrong the most. And because we're not willing to accept that, we're not actually we're failing other groups of people as well. Do you see what I mean? For the same reasons, literally the same reasons. And it's only when you go and you teach back to back in these areas that you go, well, the same reasons are happening, the same things are happening. So why can't we tackle these issues? And we can't tackle these issues because, quite frankly, there are too many ideas and ideologies out there that pretty much scrape the board and just go, this is what it is. It's okay, fine. So it's racism. Well, it can't be. Not if they're failing too. It just cannot be structural. It cannot be institutional in the same way that we're talking about it. We have to do something, but we can't do something because if we're going to take it that way, then we've got to go, well, that's not a real thing. But it's a real thing, and it keeps keeps smacking us back in the face over and over again. So when are we going to actually tackle the actual issues as opposed to the ones that we like to think about?
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Neither do I.
My feeling is that we've spent decades telling all kids, you have to come to school. And this article spoke specifically about the effect that COVID's had on those disadvantaged children, particularly from white communities. And basically, COVID said to them suddenly, actually, you don't have to come to school. In fact, it's not that you don't have to come to school. We actually don't want you to come to school. You mustn't come to school. And I think it debunked the argument because those kids had never got the second part of the argument. You must come to school because school is your opportunity to change the world that you live in, to become something different, to have opportunity, to make choices about what you want to do. Well, they never heard that and they never saw that because everyone around them is in the same are in the same kind of jobs where they don't need those qualifications, where it doesn't matter if you've got your maths GCSE because you're going to go and work with your dad anyway, those kinds of things. So for so many kids, around here we've lots of rural communities, lots of kids going to work on the farm with families or on other farms, and they don't see that, they make no connection with the need for qualifications, and it makes it really difficult to encourage kids to work hard and to do well. And my view is that 18%, I think it was 18.6% of the white disadvantaged children that got their passes in English and maths, or was it just English? I can't remember. But those kids there are probably the ones who have parents saying, you need to work hard in school. If you try really hard, you won't have to go and work in whatever industry your dad's been working in or I've been doing. You can do something different. You can have aspiration. And I just think it's as much embedded in society as it is in a sort of a more modern situation where now we've got TikTok and things that constantly feed to kids those messages about you don't need school, you don't need to do this, the idea that you can become an influencer and things like that, you know. And so the kids are seeing other things that they can do. They're seeing what their family and all the people around them are doing and saying, well, my mum and dad never got maths. And I think all of that is playing into one big scenario where COVID then came along and said, we don't even want you to come to school anymore. And we've blown that argument apart. It's going to take decades, I think, for that to work its way through.
But I don't think I'm coming from the same point of view as you at all, because
Right.
I'm children who literally have like got nothing, like literally for decades they've had nothing, and therefore it's not like my dad's like a farmer or my dad's like doing this trade. My dad's doing nothing. My dad's not even
Yeah.
around in the first place, right? So therefore I don't have a dad. It's not working. He's not taking part in my life. And so therefore what's actually happening with some of these families is that it's just going to pop, because like there's too many things going on in these families, too much like issues, and therefore nothing's really happening. And therefore we're turning around going, it's trauma, it's whatever. Fine, maybe there is some element of that, but people get over it to get somewhere else. But what we're not tackling is the basic issues, which is that essentially people don't have like basic literacy and numeracy, right? Even farmers have that. They do. These people have it whether they like it or not. What we're talking about is like people have nothing whatsoever, and they're just going towards a nothingness, which we then have to deal with over and over again with the white working class, because we're assuming that there'll come a day that, and even people have promised it to them over and over again, and it's not going to happen, that they will get the industrial like base back, like it'll all come back. It won't happen. The things that are there can continue, but the things that we've lost cannot continue anymore, and therefore we need to give them some future somewhere outside of all of this.
I've got a question. Is there like any, do you guys know of any sort of like national initiative that specifically targets white British pupils, whether that's boys, girls, both? Because I feel like if I just speak from my perspective growing up, like, you know, I was free school meals. I had a lot in common with disadvantaged white children.
Yeah.
I actually grew up in an area in West London that had a really large Irish population, and we had many parallels. And like, I think what saved me a lot of the time at school was like, I also had, like, I lived with my mum and she didn't have any qualifications in the UK, but I think the difference was in many ways that there were so many different initiatives that were available to me because, you know, I was BAME, or I just, you know, disadvantaged BAME, etc., free school meals. And I was able to kind of seek external help from the Social Mobility Foundation, who really helped me because at GCSE. I guess that was after GCSEs though, but I don't think I've ever seen anything that targets specifically white children, despite the fact that every single school I've been to, they've consistently been amongst the lowest achieving ethnic groups. And
they're not allowed, are they? Like when people try to target them the same way that Stormzy tried, like actually got like his scholarship in Cambridge
for black kids,
it was the same way that he got it, the equivalent was not allowed, even in a private school. Okay, so the only person that I know is Tony Sewell, and he actually does target like black and white children. They're disadvantaged, and he tries to get them connections. He tries to like bring them like within the fold. He tries to like get them to like know people and to have like these, like, you know, these connections that you wouldn't have otherwise. But he's the only person that I know that will actually do this. It's only because he started off with like black working class children that he went, well, they're the same. But unless people make the link in their own head, they're not going to do this. They'll just go like I said, the argument is that white people are privileged, and therefore no matter who you are, you're just privileged, and they do not take into account the disadvantage that white working class children face, which all working class children face. I agree, but the difference is that sometimes when you're from a smaller group, you can make a much bigger difference, right? Sometimes you can just get there much earlier, or you can just save yourselves in a slightly different way. Because they're such a big group, we don't see them in the same way. We just lump them in with everybody else. Well, quite frankly, they're not the same as the middle class. They don't have the same advantages whatsoever. And it's no surprise to me that they're failing in the way they are, because no one's actually trying to like build the system in a way that actually helps them. We just keep looking at the groups that are actually getting through, and we're not looking at the groups that aren't getting through. And we're not looking at them well enough to go, well, this is what we have to do. Because in some ways, we just kind of expect like white working class like people to fail because they're white working class. It's so disgusting the way that we treat them sometimes in this society. It's like we've decided they're the lowest of the low, and therefore there's no point.
Yeah.
Go on,
Jo.
Lucy, were you going to say
Yasmin.
something?
Well, I mean, I was just going to say that I get that, and I think that we're talking about two different sort of things that fit into the same thing, because you're right, you're talking about those kids who are really disadvantaged, who don't even have the family around, you know, the fathers around, and that kind of guidance. And I'm talking about kids who are, from my experience, because I worked in a largely white, I mean, you know, we did have kids of other ethnicities, but it was predominantly white, but very sort of mixed, from your most privileged kids down to the most deprived rural community, you know, kids coming from those sort of communities where there really wasn't much. And so I think we're just talking about things from the perspectives that we see. And so what I'm talking about are those kids who you know, do see what's out there for them and don't see school as necessarily the route to get there. You know, I mean, I was speaking to a young lad the other day. He's from a farming family. He's going to university to study robotic engineering because he's got to earn money until he's able to take on the farm, which he hopes he'll be able to do. So I'm not saying that all people, you know, everyone who goes into farming is underqualified, but what I'm saying is that for lots of them, I mean, I used to teach a kid who was barely in school, and I call him a guy because he was like a man. He was barely in school because he was always being kept home because there was work to do on the farm that he had to do. But it's not just farmers, it's kids whose parents work, you know, whose dads work in construction, or whose, you know, mums are in childcare and they're staying home to help because, you know, they need an extra pair of hands, or, you know, so it's all those kinds of things that play in to that vision of there's no need for me to have an education. There's no, so it's not just about that lack of provision. And like Yasmin says, there are no schemes for white people. You can put one out there. If you said this is to help white underprivileged kids, people would go mad. But that, you know, you do have that embedded within communities, unfortunately, a low view on academics, on education, and that's why actually kids from ethnic minorities sometimes perform better, because their aspiration in their family setting is different. So that's all I'm saying, that low aspiration is one of their situations, and that's community embedded.
I'm grimacing because like I do understand like where it comes from, like the idea that you would like take part in like whatever your parents do. I still remember, like, you know, I know how to like cut a pattern, basically. I know how to like cut around like, you know, fabric, because my mum used to do it, right? She was a textile worker, so I used to like go into the garage, and you know, that was like basically her homespun factory, basically, is what it came down to. And there were millions of them all around the country. And so I used to go in and used to like spend some time with her. And the way to spend some time with her was literally like drawing round patterns and cutting them out, and basically helping her to like do the job that she was trying to do. So I do get like that working class children do help their parents. And I also get that maybe some parents have like more of a value on literacy and numeracy. And I get that they're all put in the mix. But the group that we're really should be concerned about is not the farmers, is not the people who've got somewhere got some outlet here that they can get through and they can go somewhere else. The group of people you need to really be concerned about, the people who genuinely do not have an outlet, right? There's no more steelworks, there's no more like, you know, mines, there's no more like textiles factories really. So where are they going to go? They're not going to go anywhere unless we teach them, like literally in the we get them somewhere. Like we cannot keep going down this route where, what is it? It's just benefit city. The point about like the people that you're talking about, Lucy, is like they will get somewhere. They've got the fact, like they've got their farm. They will go somewhere and do a job eventually, even if they don't produce the results for us. But the point is, the children who will not produce results and will just sit in the system, they're the ones we have to be truly concerned about, because if they don't have that, they have nothing.
But on the statistics, when you just look at the raw, the article was about the statistics that white working or white children from disadvantaged backgrounds are doing more poorly statistically than other. Then all I'm saying is that's a reason for it. And you're talking about the outcomes, and you're absolutely right that for many kids, the outcome of not attending school will be no future, will be in terms of, you know, work and aspiration. And so I don't disagree with that. Overall,
I'd say there are definitely like regional differences, I think, in what stands out to people. Like Lucy, I think, you know, you're from the Southwest. Tarjinder, you're from the Midlands. I'm in London. I've definitely been aware of over. Sorry?
Give me a break.
What? I didn't hear what you said.
Like literally, like I'm from the Midlands, but I live in the North too.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, I've definitely been aware of in London that I think London typically like it always comes out on top in terms of outcomes for disadvantaged peoples. If I'm not mistaken, like there's this argument that like there's, I guess, loads of different theories. Like there's this argument that when that, you know, the best, or I really hate to say that, but a lot of people say like a lot of teachers come to London, or there are loads of disadvantaged children, and it's kind of normalized to, and children that are around high achieving children, when they are disadvantaged themselves, tend to do better. I'm really not explaining this well, but anyway, what I'm trying to say is I think London is quite unique when it comes to the stats. But like last year, just to give an anecdote, I was actually at a school in East London, and I'm in a borough, I live and have taught in Newham, where Newham always makes the news because of the number of, you know, disadvantaged children that go to Oxbridge or get top grades or go into medicine or even go to the Ivy League in America. And I was at a school that had a really large population of disadvantaged white children, and they were the lowest achieving, consistently the lowest achieving in the school. And in many ways, I believe the children that like I was SLT, and there were so many times, obviously I don't really want to like kind of divulge anything about the school, but you know, there were so many times we were in meetings and we discussed this, and we discussed how we could raise their attainment and their aspirations, and so many different interventions and just things were done all the time for teachers to try to improve that. And still, I believe consistently they were the lowest performing pupils in terms of outcomes. And I think for me, just having grown up poor, I definitely think there should be some sort of national initiatives that target white British people specifically. And I don't think that it's something that anyone else should see as racist or exclusionary, because at the end of the day, the stats show that they are the lowest achieving pupils. And like we've got schools like Michaela, who I saw tweeting the other day, you know, that they got 100% 4+ in English and maths. And, you know, I think if one school can do it, every school should be able to do that, and children should, irrespective of what it is that they want to go into in the future, just on the grounds that, you know, everyone is in school until 16, or everyone should be in school until 16. At the very least, I feel like, you know, you should be able to be supported to pass your GCSEs, whatever that looks like. And if that means having to target particular ethnic groups specifically or uniquely, I really feel like it should happen.
Can I just interject? I'm so sorry for the. I just want to tell you about Hachette Learning. This show is brought to you in partnership with Hachette Learning, publishes professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit www.hachetteLearning.com to explore the full range of titles. And also the Chalk and Talk podcast. If you're looking for another great education podcast, check out Chalk and Talk with Anna Stokey. Anna is a passionate advocate for evidence-based maths education for students of all ages. On her podcast, she talks about everything from effective teaching methods and how-to guides for teaching maths facts to tips for evaluating research shows claims. She brings on top-notch guests, educators, researchers and policymakers, and discusses issues that directly impact teachers and students. Chalk and Talk is for anyone interested in education, so find it wherever you get your podcasts.
I think, I really hate to stereotype people, but I am giving a lot of thought to, aspirational differences within different communities. Even though my mum was on benefits when I was growing up, like I lived in a council house, I was free school meals, but there was very much an expectation. Like I always knew I was going to go to university, and I did. And there were a lot of people around me who grew up in very similar circumstances who didn't have that aspiration, didn't have that expectation. And that's why I feel like in some ways I do feel like it's a little bit bigger than just schools. I see Tarjinder's like firing up.
Right, if you work in these areas, like there are times when I genuinely think that white middle class people are sorry Lucy, but you are genuinely the problem sometimes, because like there are people who like go and just go like they're like, well, you're just this group of people who are just low so low, we don't have to care about you, we'll care about these other people, we'll take care of like them, we'll think about them instead. And actually we're not thinking about this group of people that have like literally worked their arse off like for most of existence in this country. And so when you work in these like white working class areas, like genuinely white working class areas, that you find that, like, for example, one of the stereotypes that I had, because I was like a Guardian reader, was they just like vote against their own benefits. It's like, no, they're not doing that. The people who work are voting against the people who are on benefits. You've got to understand they're trying to maintain a culture of hard working, because that's what they used to do, and we're not maintaining that culture. We're not even helping those people maintain that culture. What we're doing is actively acting against them. And then what do we expect? Like they're having to send their children to like schools that are mediocre, that have poor behavior management, they do not have the right curriculum, and they want to live in that area because that's where they come from. And I understand that too, right? If you came from a place, you'd want to be there, so why can't they be there? So they have a choice. You either move away and therefore your children move away, or you stay there and your children do not have a good education. So what we need to do is literally build up this system to be a better education system, and I don't think we're doing that right now. I think what we're doing is like playing to like the lowest common denominator too often, because look, that one child has got like so much trauma they cannot cope in class. Fair enough, they do need like all the resources we can push at them, but it does not mean the whole curriculum, the whole like education system needs to change. It doesn't need to change. And what needs to change is for that one person, right? So we do what we can. Instead, what we do is we change everything because it makes like these people feel better about themselves, but it doesn't actually do the right thing towards the group of people that we're talking about. I still look at my own education. I'm grateful to have gone to like a middle class school where basically, you know, there were middle class people all around me, and I was one of the few working class kids, and I had to go back within my own teaching career and look at what working class children actually had to face. And it's not pretty, it's not right, and I would not have got anywhere further this way with that, okay, even with all the initiatives, because they didn't care about like your circumstances. They felt sorry for you. Well, I don't need you to feel sorry for me. I can only say that because I went to that kind of school. And that's what Michaela does. Let's face it, they don't feel sorry for you. They do like help you as best they can. And there was this one incident of like this child who had got their A levels, I think it was, who'd like gone through a car crash. It was awful for them, and they supported him. They supported the family. Literally, like his classmates came round and like gave him their notes, right? Gave him their notes so he could pass that exam. that's real community. So where do we get that from in all these communities, as opposed to just like here and there?
I saw a school on Twitter the other day, or on X, where they basically were posting the percentage of pupils that had passed their GCSEs. I think it was somewhere up north. It was an academy that I've seen like come under fire quite a few times. I don't know if it was the same school, but it's certainly in a trust that I've seen get attacked on X like a number of times. And I think they were posting like a summary of how much their school has improved based on their GCSE results last week. And I remember there was this reply that caught my eye where somebody said, how many of the pupils who are included in these results were on roll? No, how many pupils did you have on roll in September that were no longer on roll by the time that these results came out? Or basically, like, how many kids disappeared over the course of the year and were off-rolled or excluded or whatever. And I just, for me, find it really interesting that from my experience, a lot of the time when a school in a particularly disadvantaged area, or with, you know, large cohorts of pupils that are objectively, you know, on paper considered disadvantaged, those schools often get attacked for the policies that they implement or what they've done to try improve those people's outcomes. And I just wonder if either of you have any thoughts as to why that is.
Do you want to go first, Lucy, or shall I?
You go first.
Okay, so I think they're attacked because they have to basically like have a basic level of like behavior management. So therefore there are children who've gone off the rails. So basically somebody else has like done a job and that job has not worked. And one thing that really frustrates me in the education system is the fact that we don't know the consultants and the people who like have ideas, the academics, whatever, even teachers, even people like myself who work in academies, who don't do a good job and basically fail those children in the first place, right? So why have they got to a point where it's not manageable anymore? Like, so I didn't go to a school like that. I went to a school where there were disadvantaged children, there were advantaged children too, I accept that. But it didn't go to rotten ruin overnight, right? So where has that come from? And then these multi-academy trusts, or these people have to go in, and then they're blamed for the fact they have to go, okay, we have to make some hard decisions now. How can we maintain the behaviour and the learning of the majority of the pupils so we can get some results? And then they're blamed for that. And that seems really unfair. Now, are there alternatives? Should there be alternatives? Yes. But you cannot, like, unless you're willing to go back a step and go, well, where did it fail in the first place? You cannot just blame the people who came in. I think that's really unfair. And I think it's going to put off. I genuinely think that, like, most multi-academy trusts now will just go, we're not taking on any more schools. We're not going to bother. Because what's the point? Like, what's the point of us doing the hard work if you're just going to turn around and say this to us? Like, just leave it to what it is, because we're going to get trolleyed over this. So there's no more point. Let's just like reserve it for ourselves. And that will be one of the worst things we can do within this system, is just go, we'll just reserve it for ourselves.
I think I agree. I feel as though, oh, sorry, Tarjinder, I think you froze. So I agree with you. I mean, I think that a lot of these problems have a root cause. A lot of the problems have a root cause in that breakdown of discipline. And that started, I don't know when it started, but easily 20 years ago, when I look at the differences, even in preschool, between what my eldest had and then 7 years later what my youngest had, you know, it was completely different. They had set playtimes, they were allowed outside, they had set toys they were allowed to play with on different days, and that meant that they had to tidy up before they got new things. And then suddenly it became a very permissive kind of environment, so the children can go outside whenever they want. There had to be free flow, there had to be, could get any toys out, they weren't expected to tidy up, because, and all of those things have broken down that level of expectation from children and that discipline from children. Because my son wasn't allowed to go out and play because he refused to put his coat on, so they didn't let him go out to play. And I was fine with that, because if the rule was that you had to wear a coat because it was cold, then if he wasn't going to listen, he would have to bear those consequences. That's how I felt about it. I wasn't at all bothered, because that was the school rules. I didn't make him wear a coat because I needed to go to the places I needed to go to, and if he was going to get cold, God, that was tough. But we became this sort of society that sort of mollycoddles and sort of allows children to make decisions for themselves, and it's all about them deciding, child-led all the time. And I think that has ended up in a situation where actually the children and now young people really believe that they have the control over what happens, and I think that's a lot of the issue.
Sorry, I can't read like the comment. Sorry, it's too small on my phone.
It says I work in AP, and behavior management in mainstream seems to cause more issues.
In what, sorry, unless they can expand on that, I'm not accepting it.
I suspect it means.
I get that. Yeah, go on, Lucy.
Well, I was going to say, I think what it means is that actually mainstream settings are not managing behaviour as well as alternative provision settings are managing it, and that's what's causing the issues. That's how I would read that.
Problem is, like, okay, we cannot in a class of like children. Okay, so I do think that one of the problems that we have is we're confusing normal with norms, right? So we're confusing what is normal for most people with the norm, and therefore we're saying, okay, if it's not normal, therefore it's not the norm, therefore you've got to change the norm. We don't have to change the norm for most children at all. We're making the situation. Look, my whole shtick as a teacher was always this, right? I honestly, like, in my hand, like, hand on my heart, I could never deal with it, like the top 1% of children who are really difficult. I couldn't deal with them by myself. What I could do was take care of like the vast majority of children in my class. I could literally turn them around. Like all those troublemakers who were just on the brink, I could like get them in. And therefore my class looked well behaved. And therefore there was the odd child that was still like not quite there, but they were getting there, kind of thing, right? So I'm not going to pretend I was something that I wasn't, because I wasn't that person, right? But the problem is that you're getting people to like not turn those children around. So that 20-25% of your class that is literally going along with like that child who literally does have problems and does need to have something else, they're going along with it and literally ruining your class. You're letting them do what they want to do. And that does not work in a class. Like, you have to have discipline. You have to have some sort of rules. Like, you have to have them for yourself, you know, like somewhere. Otherwise, it doesn't work anyway. Like, you know, I'm not saying that it always has to be externally, like, imposed. But when you're a child, it does for a while, you know. Like, my niece, like, the last 2 weeks, she's just there. And it's like, what do you want? What do you want? She's only 2. I want chocolate. Well, you can't have it right now. You've got to have it after you have dinner, right? Like, you've just got to say that. And as lovely as she is, as cute as she is, you've just got to say no. Like, you've got to find it in your heart to say that. And the problem is, too many people in mainstream education do not say no when they should say, stick to it. And therefore, we have all these other issues. And the problem is, we don't get to those kids who really do have issues, as opposed to just the naughty ones. Like I would have counted myself as that naughty one who would have just gone off the rails if it wasn't for some discipline in class, right? I'd count myself that way, right?
Yeah.
I told off and told not to do certain things, and yes, I got the odd detention. It was fine. Like, it wasn't like it was life changing. It wasn't like it was one off. The problem is, too many children now get too many detentions because we're not disciplining enough children in the first place, just to cut it out in the first place. So therefore, we can get to the children who really do need our help.
Yeah, I think, Tarjinder, I know you're in primary school, and I completely understand, like, what you're saying is applicable to like any kind of, you know, school age and the classroom. I get what you're saying, but I think what that point made me think of was how, when I think I once saw this graph that represented like the number of exclusions per year group, and by exclusions that was like, I think, suspensions and fixed time exclusions, not permanent. And there was this huge like spike between year 6s and 7 when children started secondary school. And I think just going from a primary school setting to secondary school, where children have to then manage the expectations of like more than 10 different teachers, you know, get used to a whole new set of rules, how a lot of the time schools can, I don't know, like secondary school can be a really different experience. Like I think from that point onwards, sometimes children just fall through the gaps. But like, I don't want to derail. I also missed the comment that was just on the board. I don't want to derail what it is that we're talking about. But one thing I do want to talk about, and I feel like Tarjinder really isn't going to like this. I want to talk about the changes. Like, part of me feels like a lot of what helped children in schools has kind of disappeared, and requirements for like post 16, or a lot of like requirements at school, I feel like have been raised. And I'll explain what I'm saying. I'm really not like, I feel like I'm just a bit loopy today, like I've just come back from holiday and I'm not really explaining myself well. But one of the things I want to talk about, and I guess I know, although I know the article was basically focused on up until GCSE, like I do want to talk about how say between like 2010 and now, so much of what helped disadvantaged children and so much of what supported aspirations has disappeared. So things like EMA, for example, I think even like the curriculum, I think post 2017, when it was changed to numbers, and the C grade, you know, has become split into a strong pass and a standard pass. And now if you don't get a strong pass, if you don't get a 5, you know, it really limits the opportunities that you have post 16. And how even, you know, 10 years ago, you could get into A levels with, you know, 5 A stars to C grades, whereas now children need an average of A grades to even qualify for A levels, and otherwise, you know, we'll have to do BTECs. And I don't have anything against BTECs, but I do really feel like a lot of what helped children, a lot of what certainly helped me have aspirations at school, or what supported my aspirations, have very much disappeared. And, you know, I feel like that's by design.
Which is basically like we never, what we don't do, like we keep tinkering around with the academic system, and what we never do is like make the vocational system better. So why do we keep tinkering around with the academic system to make people feel good about themselves? They're not academic. Make the vocational system better. There are countries that have a better vocational system than us. Germany does, like most of the Scandinavian countries do. Like other countries do this so much better than us. Why can we not learn from them and go, if you are going to be vocational, do it? And part of the problem is like the class system in this country, where middle class people want their kids to be academic no matter what, no matter how dumb they are. They would rather they like went on to university, had like A levels, rather than it be a system whereby actually, do you know what, you go and do like a trade. Like, and that working class person does an academic degree because they're better off that way, right? So academically and intentionally, and in terms of your own like well-being, you'd be better off doing certain things, and yet we're not allowed to do that because we're just stuck in this class-based system which just keeps replicating itself in a bad way. And I do not mean to go down a Marxist route before you say it, like Lucy, whatsoever, but I do mean that we have to have like a system whereby we allow people to do what they're good at the best their abilities.
But I agree. I don't disagree with that. So, you know, I try not to bring my own children into things, but I've got one child who's a doctor, one who studied engineering, and my daughter's gone straight from A levels, started work the next day training as a chef. She's no intention of going to university. And I know you said I'm middle class and I fit that sort of worst demographic and that's perceived by society. And I apologize for that. But, you know, she was told repeatedly at school, write a personal statement anyway, just write one, just do one anyway. And when we talk about their grades and the fact, you're absolutely right, Yasmin, I don't think it's a government thing, I think it's a school thing, that students, you know, were being turned down from doing A levels because they only had a B for their GCSE grade in that subject. And I find that appalling, but it's driven by the fact that schools have become a marketable asset. And so what they want, my daughter probably was considered a bit of a letdown by the school in some ways because she didn't contribute to their going on to university figures, to their Russell Group figures, to any Oxbridge figures, etc. And so because they are having to market, because they are now businesses more than they are education establishments, particularly when you look at that post-16 education system where they're all competing for students, where some sixth forms offered free laptops and things to students if they choose to go there, if they get certain grades or meet certain requirements, none of which are from a middle class and white background. But those are the problems that are being created societally by this competition climate that we have, and it's a great shame. But there is always somewhere for people to go. There is always an opportunity. I didn't go to university. I left A levels in the middle of A levels. I joined the Navy and I served as an aircraft engineer for 5 years. But I went and did an open university degree, and I think that we should be looking as well at communicating that message to young people that success in school, and then success is measured by how many go to university. Well, your success isn't. Your success is measured by how whether you have a home, whether you have the things around you that you wanted, whatever they are, whether that be a nice car, or that's how we measure success. We look at our own lives and we say, I think I'm happy with what I've got, and that doesn't have to come from academic results, but academic results are excellent if you can get them, but we live in a
I said, Lucy, the problem is that what we do is like we lower results for like working class children all the time. It's like you've got to do the vocation, do this, right? Because you're not good enough. And we have this initial idea in our heads that they are already inferior because we've got a class-based system, and middle class people are superior because they have this thing. And we have to like get rid of that. That's the thing that we need to get rid of. And like I said, I don't mean it through ideology. I mean genuinely, we've got to like go towards a better system of like employing people into jobs they actually want to do, so they're happier. Like you said, like your daughter should not be thought of like less because she wants to be a chef. If that's what she is really good at, let her do it. I love myself, like I genuinely like, I'll look at, like, if you saw the videos I look on like Facebook all the time, like I'm just there with Notorious Foodie, like watching what he does, right? Because I love it. So why should that not be part of your life and be a valuable part of your life? You can do that well, as opposed to something else. We don't value these things because the problem is we see certain things as being lower class, certain things as being upper class, and we devalue both in the process.
I want to say quickly, I mean, Lucy, I don't think you have anything that you need to apologize for, but also Tarjinder, like when you talk about the class system, like I agree with genuinely so much of it. And I think as well, having an education system where a lot of like post 16 and then university relies on predictions and kind of projections from the people whose care or whose classes that you're in, causes a lot of problems for some of the most disadvantaged children because of the class system and because of preconceived ideas or because of who certain people's families are. Like, I find it really interesting, for example, that in medicine, like that so many of the people that get into medicine already have family that are doctors, or have relatives or know people that are doctors, and it's so much harder for the people that don't have that to get in, and that applies to so many of these professions. And I completely agree with you that children should be pushed to do what they're best at, and it shouldn't, if what you're best at is maybe different to the typical kind of academia, it doesn't make you any less than. But there's certainly that kind of sentiment, no matter what a child gets in school. You can ask any child, irrespective of their attainment, as what they see as a successful career, and I could guarantee that the children in my class would pretty much have the same views on what they see as a successful career and what they don't. And I do think that plays a part in a lot of the problems, a lot of the problems, that children face post 16 when they're faced with having to make decisions about their future. But there was a comment there that I just want to address, and it was somebody basically saying, it was about essentially parental accountability, and that a lot of things have to start at home. And we're nearly in September, and I think we're only about a week away from when there's going to be someone somewhere on the news for refusing to wear correct uniform, and they're going to make like front page news. And like, I think
it's like,
I know I've like derailed everything now, but like we really do need to talk about the role that the media play in like denigrating schools and teachers and making everything so much harder. Like I had a parent, my mum had never experienced school in the UK, but like as a bare minimum, I had to respect all my teachers. She didn't care. Like I wasn't entitled to a side of the story. Like my mum always told me, you have to respect your teachers. You cannot waste their time. And there's no doubt that influenced my mindset at school. I always saw my teachers, whoever they were, I always saw them as somebody deserving of respect, you know, someone I had to listen to, somebody who knew better than me. And that helped me in school and then essentially helped me in all my subjects and to, you know, achieve good grades. It's really important. And that is kind of disappearing, you
But
know.
that ties back to what I was saying originally, which was that if you grow up in a home where the main feedback that you get is, well, I never got GCSEs, I never got grades. My husband and I, neither of us went to university. We both joined the Navy around age 18 and worked. And for both of us, we had those aspirations for our kids, though, that they would do what they wanted to do, not what we thought they should do, but what they wanted to do. And we fed back that message about, it is important to be respectful at school. It doesn't matter that our outcomes weren't, your top shiny sort of, certificates and gongs and things, but that your hard work makes a difference. I'm a great believer in the grammar school system, which is another curveball I'd throw in. And I think that we probably miss out on having something like that accelerates that opportunity for kids from those, but the very background. If we go back to the original topic of discussion, which was that those kids from white disadvantaged communities are kept and maintained within that disadvantage by the structures of society, basically by what they're told they can and can't do, by that lack of opportunity. And so from my perspective, or in my view, one of the biggest issues that we face is a decline in parental belief in education and a belief that you are entitled, like you said, to have a side of the story. We've all been there in class where a kid's gone to throw a chair and then they say, oh, I was just moving it. I was just, do you get what I mean? And that kind of thing makes it impossible. We've got to get a grip on it.
That the child who wants to throw the chair is more important in a working class environment than the child who doesn't want to throw the chair. The child who sits there and gets on with it is less important. They get less of an education. And we still have an issue in this society where, okay, we don't have enough, as far as I'm concerned, we don't have enough working class people who are educated, and we do need to have them educated. We need a certain percentage, be it 10%, I don't care, but we need a certain percent. What we can't do is let it all go to rack and ruin because of everything else, right? We cannot have this class-based system all the time. And we used to have a much better system. And I don't believe in grammar schools. They used to produce way more working class kids who actually came out the other end and could be politicians, who were decision makers, who actually did right than we have now. And like I said, I don't want to go back to it, but I don't see the comprehensive system going like that way. And by the way, it was created by somebody who went to private school in the first place and just had an issue with it. Quite frankly, that just says it all, as far as I'm concerned. So you destroy something that works for the vast majority of people in society for something that truly does not work for anybody. And I come from a comprehensive school, by the way. So if I have issues, I like to a middle class school where I got advantages and other people didn't, and I saw that as a teacher. So therefore you've got to see it back 20 years later. This is the crap that goes down if you went to a working class school. You should not have to see that. I'd rather see a grammar school system where it's all laid out, and this is what you have done, a truly tripartite system where it genuinely is favouring all these different groups of people regardless of their academic ability, getting them somewhere, as opposed to this, which is getting so many people nowhere at all.
Yasmin, can I just get you to hold your point for 1 second?
Sure.
Because I just wanted to talk about Hachette Learning. So this show is brought to you in partnership with Hachette Learning, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools and around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit www.hachetteLearning.com to explore the full range of titles. Yasmin.
Another curveball that I wanted to throw in is the elitism and the classism that exists in teaching as well. I don't know if this is you guys' experience, but I once worked at a school where all of our details were kept on Sims. And I remember a time when our details were like, just our first page on Sims was printed out to just update every staff member's emergency contact details. And under like my name and emergency contact details, I noticed like when we were handing out the sheets that it had everyone's university and degree class on like Sims, like, or included in the first page of information. And it really stood out to me because, you know, like my experience in teaching, you know, the people who went to the quote unquote best universities, you know, or people who did teach first would get promoted quicker than other members of staff. And for me, like, just, you know, your point there just reminded me of that, Tarjinder. Like, I feel like representation really matters. You know, it's really important for children to see themselves in, you know, staff and in the people in their sphere of influence. And, you know, I just wanted to put that out there. Like, I know there are huge differences across the country, but that's certainly something that I've seen in London.
Okay, so where I would disagree with you, Yasmin, to be fair, I don't necessarily think that you have to be represented in your entirety. Okay, so if I'm coming from a working class background, I represent it in a white working class area, that's still the same thing. And whether a black person does it like in a white working class area, it's the same difference, as in you understand the circumstances and therefore you understand what you're talking about. That's more important than just pure representation by itself, because what you get with pure representation, particularly like in the culture at the moment, is you don't get like working class people at all. What you get is like middle class people pretending to be working class people, talking rubbish as far as I'm concerned, and not actually making a difference to the situation whatsoever, because all they want is what they want for themselves.
I don't like this. I guess you're going to say, well, you are white middle class, so you're not going to like this. But I think the class thing, I don't want to get too hung up on that, because actually I don't know what class I am, because I grew up in a fairly nice household, but I served as the lowest rank in the Royal Navy that you can possibly be for 5 years. And then I had to do an Open University degree. I worked as an HLTA. I've never reached the giddy heights of being a teacher despite getting my degree for various reasons. There were various things that came into play on that. So what class am I? I don't even know what I am. You know, we have worked our way up to having a nice house, and to, you know, we have worked really hard to give our children, you know, that those opportunities that they have taken. But I don't know that I don't know what middle class is, because when I see what middle class is, people look a lot richer to me. So where are we on these things? Do you get what I mean? And you know, if you were working class and you become a CEO of something, are you still working class with your 6-figure salary? You know, so where does it, I don't like the class thing. We're talking about white disadvantaged children, and yes, they may come from that working class element, but I think taking this too far to a class war thing, where the middle classes are bad people and your working classes are the good people, I don't know that that's helpful. But I appreciate that I'm coming at this from a different position.
Look, Lucy, I'm not saying that it's a class war situation. I'm not saying that. I'm saying there is a particular ideology that like creates this in the first place, and therefore like takes it away too. Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, like the tripartite system was not amazing. It did not do the best job whatsoever, but it did still give most people a chance in life. Okay, and I was on the back of that. Like I literally rode off the back of that. And it still meant you went to like a decent school. What we've got is like not the best school system for everybody. We've got the worst school system for everyone, and we've just got to like fight it out now. And that's not a good system, right? So who does that benefit? And I'm sorry, but it does benefit middle class people who've got academic children, who just want their children to be academic, because the people who like come out lowest are always going to be the working class in that system, because we have the lowest number of people. Okay, so we don't have the connections, we don't have the resources, we don't have this, and all of it comes into play way worse than it would do otherwise. Doug Lamoff has like a really good like article on this where he talks about, like, you know, if you want to have like like this meritocratic system, it doesn't work really. Like, this comprehensive system does not work either in America or in Britain, because what you end up with is aristocracy anyway. You end up with people who can pay you money to get resources to do whatever. And the whole point of the tripartite system, even though, like I said, it didn't work to its best necessarily, was that it gave advantages to the people who genuinely work. We tried to find them and we tried to promote them, right? But what we didn't do well was like promote people who are vocational. And that's what we need to do. We need to like fix that part of the system instead of like constantly attacking the academic side. Like, leave it as it is. If it's good enough, leave it as it is, and then get to the actual point of the crux of this, which is to make it vocational as well as it can be. Your child who wants to be a chef should be, honestly, like as well regarded as any doctor, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
if they do,
absolutely.
they can, then they should be as well regarded. Why don't we do this as society? This is class based, and that doesn't mean we reduce class or whatever. It just means we accept it, but then we move on from it, and we do what we can for the children who genuinely can do the right thing and can honestly, like, you know, study to the best of their abilities. There's no point in teaching them anything otherwise.
Yeah, I just don't think that we do anyone favours by entrenching them in a class system, by defining them. And you know, like what grammar schools did offer was the chance for all children to sit a flawed exam system. I appreciate, but you know, if you did well, you went to grammar school. But actually, I'll tell you something, there were some kids who made it through the grammar school exam but then weren't allowed to go because their parents didn't want them to go to the grammar school with the fancy uniform, with all the high expectations and things. And again, that goes back to those societal expectations and the value that we place on academics. And when I used to say to the kids I worked with, because I worked with kids that were predominantly pupil premium, with kids who had behaviour issues, and I worked with a mix of different kids, but predominantly that was what my role was. And I used to say to them, it just drives me mad that you guys have got all these opportunities. You can come and sit in a classroom and you can learn, or you can come and sit in a classroom and mess around, and yet there are kids in other countries who have to walk miles every single day, every day, just to get half a day of education, and they do it because they want it, and we've put it all so much on a plate for them and said you can take or reject it. That's the issue that I think we're facing.
I think, guys, should we sum up? I feel like I've talked about so many curveballs that I actually forgot to talk about a lot of the things I actually wanted to mention. But this has actually been a really nice chat. And I do also love when we spend a whole hour on one topic and still feel like we have more that we could say. But I've really enjoyed this.
I have. Can I just tell you about the Teacher Talk Humanities event that's happening? So are you a teacher of history, geography or RS? If so, get along to Manchester on Saturday the 20th of September for TTR Humanities, a day of CPD and networking brought to you for free. Grab your tickets on the pinned post on the TTR X account or visit the website at ttradio.org/events.
I just want to throw in, I actually went to the science one in April 2024 and I loved it. So I was like, I presented something, and I also listened to everyone else's presentation. It was actually a really nice day. So
very good.
If anyone's interested, it's great. Should we stop there?
Yes. Lovely.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Good to discuss with you as always.
See you. Bye-bye.
World-class vision.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.